Welcome everybody to the regular meeting for the Village of Swanton. Monday, November 25th, 2024, at roughly a little after 7 p.m. Call to order. We're going to start with Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda review. I believe Bill has requested executive session.
One brief executive session for legal, yes.
Anybody else have any?
Legal.
No, sir, I'm done.
Okay. Moving right along, number 4, public comment. Welcome, look at the public. Anybody have some comments?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Give it time.
Moving right along, number 5. Approve and accept minutes from Friday, November 8, 2024, and the Tuesday, November 12, 2024 meeting as presented.
I move,
Go ahead.
okay, I move that we accept the minutes from Friday, November 8th and Tuesday, November 12th as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second to accept the meeting minutes. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Motion carried to accept the meeting minutes. Number 6, approve and accept village warrants through Thursday, November 21st, 2024.
I move they be approved.
I second.
All right, we have a first and a second to approve the warrants. Any further discussion? No further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carried. Number 7, Swanton Village Police Department update with Chief Matt Sullivan. Matt.
All right, so you have in front of you the 2 packets, one specific to the town, one to the village. Looking at the village, there was 142 incidents in the month of October. There were 16 traffic stops, although you'll notice I found at least 2 of those that were misflagged in the system that it pulled, that were actually in the town. Or actually, it might have been the tickets, not the stop itself. So 16 traffic stops, 10 tickets, 13 warnings. There were 22 actual, or 9 tickets and 13 warnings, associated with traffic stops, because one of the tickets, I believe, was a civil ticket issued up at the high school. There were 9 arrests representing 10 arrest charges, and 9 individuals, and 2 of the arrests were associated with traffic stops. You'll see the top 10 call types of 16 traffic incidents, 13 suspicious, 11 directed patrol, 10 motor vehicle complaints, 8 community outreach, 8 trespassing, 5 welfare checks, 4 parking problems, 4 alarms, and 4 citizen disputes for the village. Looking at the town, we had 99 incidents in the town, 24 traffic stops, 14 tickets, 21 warnings. And if you break that down specific to the traffic, again, it's actually 12 tickets and 21 warnings. 8 arrests, 10 arrest charges representing 8 individuals, and 2 arrests associated with traffic. There were also 8.75 hours of additional services provided to the town outside of the regular contract hours. And we have been pretty busy in the month of October. We're also trying to get our Rule 20 requirements, training requirements done for the year, so we've been busy with training, use of force, which there are unfortunately a lack of use of force instructors currently certified in Franklin County, so we were going to the Burlington Police Department and training with them in multiple different sessions. We still have some officers to run through that training. We trained firearms and got our certification done with rifles this month, and then we are also completing CPR and first aid training. That will be coming up in December. We've done the online portion of the training, and then the practical will be in December. We have had some success actually with recruiting, and we have multiple applicants at this point that are in the hopper or just starting the process, so we'll see how that pans out, but we have a few good applicants, so we'll see how that goes.
Pretty busy on the town side, considering 10 hours of coverage versus 20.
Yes, and actually breaking down those hours, I did an interesting comparison for the town. I don't know if it was this past month or the month before, but it was interesting that we were handling a substantially larger percentage of calls in the town than Vermont State Police was, and that was year over year, consistent. And those numbers have been going up each year for both agencies.
The number of calls have
The
been.
number of calls, yes. Yeah, but the percentages stayed pretty consistent, the
Right.
breakdown, even though we're only covering it. Well, previously for 8 hours, right, so 1/3 of the time, and now 10 hours, but we're handling the majority of calls for service in the town.
Anything stick out that is concerning or positive?
Not really. I mean, traffic is still an issue. We have, in the month of October, we were definitely up on 105. Engaging in traffic enforcement, and it is difficult up there. I would say that the majority of vehicles, again, were within reason. They were within 10 miles per hour of the speed limit. But then consistently, you would have your anomalous operator who was going mid-60s. So that's an issue. It's an issue engaging in traffic enforcement just because there are no shoulders on that road.
Right.
So I was personally up there on 105 and Russell, the intersection with Russell. So that stopping cars in either direction, there's really no room. So if you get vehicles coming both directions at high speed, it gets a little tricky.
Yep.
But, so it's still a consistent problem as far as traffic and people respecting the speed limits, especially through the more densely populated areas.
Right, right. And as far as the drug issues, are you seeing an increase, decrease?
We executed a search warrant, which is technically in the town, right nearby the complex here. I think I might have touched on that last month. But there's definitely, it's the same thing. It's people coming from larger urban areas who are the source of the narcotics, and then they're being distributed, usually out of a local residence. People who suffer substance use disorder are housing them. So it's the typical thing that I've seen for years and years over the course of my experience in law enforcement, both in Burlington and up here. But the guys are doing a great job. I mean, they're on top of it. It seems like there's been a slight uptick in activity recently. Last year, obviously, we tamped it down quite a bit and displaced a lot of the problem outside of Swanton, but it's always ever present and just reoccurring with different people.
Chief, when I look at these tickets, I see some like Fairfield, St. Albans City, Alberg, Franklin, East Montpelier.
So the issue with the system is that it sometimes pulls the home address of the operator rather than where the stop occurred. So I can give you one example of that because I noticed that on the report. Let me see if it was the village side.
So on the back I see
So
the first one.
So the first one, yes, Chester A. Arthur Road,
Which is in
right?
Fairfield,
That was actually on Grand Avenue.
Okay.
So when I looked at that incident, but it would take me looking at each incident, and I don't know why it does that, because it doesn't do it for all of them.
Just some.
But it's the operator's home address
Okay.
is in that area that it
Gotcha.
occasionally populates. So it's a glitch with the CAD system. But occasionally we will engage in traffic enforcement also in all of our
Stone Garden.
associated with
Right.
Stone Garden.
And that's what I was wondering, if it was Stone Garden or.
Yeah,
if
we're
it
not
was-
normally patrolling that area, but we will be out there occasionally,
Right, okay.
outside of regular patrol shift.
Right. That's all I have. Gene, you have any questions?
No, I'll study it later. I go into detail.
Yeah.
I see a lot of Thunderbird Drive right now.
Thunderbird Drive.
Chief, how many full-time applicants do we have for full-time positions?
We have currently 2. I want to say.
So just to kind of set the stage for the trustees, they really are being firm with the number of seats at the academy now. It will be a small miracle for us to identify, interview, background, polygraph, medical in time to get somebody in the January class. We're not giving up, but for my fellow town administrators and city managers watching, we would never poach a full-time certified officer. But if you want to come work in a welcoming environment, we have one opening,
Yes.
along with 46 other full-time agencies in Vermont. There's one, Newport City PD, that's fully staffed, and that's it. 46 agencies in Vermont are looking for people right now.
Well, Brandon is downsizing, so.
Yeah, there could be opportunities,
Yeah.
but
So we do have some strong candidates.
Yeah.
One is a female applicant with prior experience in Massachusetts. So she looks very strong on paper, and we'll see. Hopefully she could, and is interested in going full-time. Initially, she's only interested in part-time, has a young family, but a very strong applicant. And then we have one who has no prior law enforcement experience, but has worked in law enforcement. I've known him for many years. He worked at P.E.G, and he is a local resident here, who would be interested in full-time employment. So, and has a pretty interesting skill set. He's from Peru originally, multilingual, has a background in law, so interesting.
Okay,
Yeah.
and the academy truly is first come, first serve.
Yeah.
Certain number of slots reserved for the state police, and the rest
How
are in
many,
the queue.
how many overall slots do they have?
They capped at 45 this time.
So, yeah, 45 sounds right
45.
to me.
That's the end.
That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief, appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Moving along, number 8, discussion on tree removal in Swanton Village Green.
Okay, so I'll start with this. So as discussed in November 12th Beautification Committee update, I mentioned the plans for 2025 included collaborating with Heidi Rich-Valenta, who is our grants specialist, and the village to remove 7 conifers from the village green park. Trustee Paxman can provide further context regarding the history of this project prior to my involvement. So I was informed by Hank Lambert when I took over beautification that the trees, the conifers in the park needed to come down. Frank Shumway, who's the tree warden, stated that they needed to come down, and he discussed it with Hank Lambert, Dean Ryan, who's our head of public works, and Trustee Paxman. And they actually identified that there were 8 conifers in the park that needed to be removed due to disease. So in my capacity as the chair, I discussed with Bill, the village manager, the possibility of using beautification committee funds to replace the trees as part of our ongoing mission to plant 10 new trees a year. And so I spoke with Heidi regarding the tree removal grant because I knew that beautification didn't have the money to remove the trees, just as the village doesn't have money to remove the trees because the village gives very generously most of the park budget to beautification. So when speaking with Heidi, she said that Adam would like to be in charge of the removal, so I stepped back from that portion to allow him to take the lead on that. So Hank Lambert is currently working on a tree planting grant, and so I brought the tree removal up in our beautification update, not as a final decision, as we are definitely going to take these 8 trees out, but as we should consider if these trees are diseased, that they need to be removed because that's part of park planning and part of the tree warden's job to make sure that our trees are healthy and maintained in our municipal parks. So Heidi did the request for proposal because she needed an estimate for the grant for filing purposes because the date for the filing of the grant is January something. And with the holidays, she wasn't gonna have a lot of time to file it. So at this stage, there's no final decision that has been made to move forward with removal. That's why the grant states removal or maintenance And it's going to be up to the bidders to say whether the tree needs to be removed or if the tree can be maintained as is, and what remediation they recommend to keep the tree and not have to remove it. And if the tree is removed, a new tree will be planted in its place. So I think it's important that we emphasize that we're all just working together to try to make Swanton better, prettier, and make our park a lovely place to go.
Works for me.
Do you want to talk about how you and Hank had the discussion, or you, Hank?
Yeah, I mean, back, oh gosh, maybe 3-4 years ago,
Gotta be.
I did have the conversation with Hank. He put me in touch with Frank Shumway, and Frank and I went through. There was one tree that was removed by the bandstand, that the limbs were falling with every windstorm. So as village trustee, I did not want anybody to get hurt, and I was not willing to let anybody get hurt, so I had the tree removed. Shame on me, it never had one put back, but that's on me. So, but we decided, we went through the park, and there are more than just these 8 conifers. There's a lot of them in there. I mean, you could literally clear cut and start over, but we're not gonna do that. So, we're not gonna do that. So, that's where we're at.
Yes, Jill?
I'm kind of an environmentalist artist, so I'm sensitive to this stuff. When I heard it all had to be removed, I questioned that, and who makes that big of a decision? I can see if one of them is diseased, take it out, but all of them being removed seems extreme.
And yeah, that is extreme. And we wouldn't clear cut. I mean, that would be foolish on our part to clear cut.
Well, the symbolism of this type of tree, it's on the Vermont state flag, the evergreens. It's the Green Mountain State. So I think the diversity in the park is important.
Do we know what the disease is that has stricken the trees?
Age.
Age. So
They're over 50, 60 years old.
conifers can live up to 1,000 years.
Not these.
Yeah, these don't look very good.
They don't look good at all.
If you insist on taking all of them, David, you know about the price of lumber. Harvest them and find out how many board feet you have in these trees. They're straight, healthy looking trees to me.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna chip them up and put them in a landfill?
No, I hadn't really thought about selling them, but that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, if the tree warden has the final say as to what happens to the trees in our municipal spots. So our parks, the right-of-ways, any place that we, the village, have planted a tree, or we beautification have planted a tree, it's Frank's job to look at that tree, to see if that tree's healthy, to decide if that tree needs to stay up or come down, to decide if that tree has a disease, and if it does, what remedies are in place for those trees. And before I even got to the seat, he had said that those trees needed to come down. It's just a matter of at what point do we follow the rules of the people that we appoint to do, or not the rules, but the suggestions of the people that we appoint to do these jobs. When, Frank obviously is a landscaper, he has a nursery, and he knows trees. I don't think Frank is gonna be like, oh yeah, those trees just need to come down because
That's the way
for general
it was
purpose.
worded, they all have to go.
No.
And I was alarmed when I heard that. It's like, what?
Well, again, I mean, you and I can take a walk in the park and look at these conifers and,
Right, we have drones now, you can fly up and see the top of them, see if they're healthy.
so I'm more concerned about what's underneath, with the limbs below, because those are the ones that are gonna fall, and I'm not willing to let somebody, walk by and during a windstorm and have a limb fall on them. I don't want that on the village's conscience.
Right. Ultimately, we have the liability for not following the recommendations of our tree warden, because something does happen if a tree falls, like for instance, a big conifer like that fell on my son's car 2 years ago before he went into the Army, And, you know, that could happen. The root rot, whatever. And so, you know, we have to be conscientious about, we've had this information for a while and we haven't moved on it, and it's time to see what can we do to either make those trees healthy and keep them, or take them down and replace them. It's not like we would just cut them and leave nothing there. We would replace them.
Who planted them? Is there any?
The conifers?
Say-
The conifer trees,
Yes.
they've been there as long as I've been here, and I'm almost 60.
Well, like in St. Albans, as you go by Hardak, there's a row of firs and spruces. Dr. John Carmola planted those by hand. It's just important to have these kind of trees around the 45th parallel where we live.
So maybe those are some of the trees that we use to replace what we take down. To me, that would make sense.
All right.
Jeff?
The unfortunate part about those trees is the amount of years that I've done the car show, and we've done it. I've trimmed trees, I've gone down there many, many times and had wind-blown limbs come right down. I mean, they're dead. It's not as if they're just gonna bend and go back. They're dead, they fall off by themselves. And this would be a liability of anything if there's somebody under there, or for example, if they had the car show and we had a windy day on a Saturday, and somebody's got a $100,000 car and one of those branches comes down on top of it, there's gonna be a liability for somebody somehow, and if there's somebody standing under it. But they fall all the time. The
Well, that
guys are always
argument's-
picking up pieces of
That's
them.
argument of coming from fear, you're afraid of trees.
No, I think it's common sense, that you don't wanna be standing under something like that, to have it come down on it if you can avoid that. In reality, I understand what you're saying, 100%. I don't like cutting trees down either, because they're beautiful. But when you have a liability from the car show and or the village, because it's the village green, you have to look at that as well. I'm a business owner, so I look at liability every step I take in a day's time. What can happen if I do this? What can happen if they do that? You have to do that. And like I said, being a business owner, it's just bred into me. And I have nothing against the trees, but they are hurting, really hurting. And if you go down there and you look at them, halfway up, the majority of them, and I don't know if it's 7 or 8 or 10, most of them are dead. They're dry limbs. They're not bring backable. It's not a word, but you get what I'm saying. Most of them are. And it's like Adam said, if you were to take time and go down for a walk through there, you'd probably see, you know, liking and loving nature and stuff like that's great, but there's limits to everything. And I think the limit is being reached with those trees. I've been down there a lot of years in that park. I was telling, I think Darcy, when Swanton Festival was there, they had the cages that you go around and you go back up and you finally go around. When you get up there, even 30 years ago when that was happening, you could see the dead limbs at that height, which was probably 15, 18 feet. So it's been an ongoing thing, and it just keeps growing up or dying up, as the case may be. But that's my,
But I like the idea that, you know, if we do take the conifers down, take the trunks, and let's see what we can do about saving them and selling them off. I mean, not just chipping them up. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, no, they're quite straight.
You know, they're straight and, you know,
They
I
boss
mean, I'd be for that.
I'm not exactly sure. What are the species exactly? Do we know?
Spruce, aren't they?
Blue
Yeah.
spruce.
Are they spruce?
Blue spruce? Blue spruce?
So, but even replacing them, you know, maybe we look at,
It's just symbolic for the state of Vermont, come on, the Green Mountain State.
I get it.
Evergreen trees.
I got green maple trees in my yard,
Okay. So,
so.
but the wording of this is, we're not sure if they're coming down or they are coming down. They might need to just be trimmed or
We're,
something.
no.
So with part of the grant is that the people who do the bid go and they look at the trees and they say, yes, that tree needs to come down. No, that tree doesn't need to come down. This is what we would do instead.
And it may come to that of the 8 conifers, they say only 5 of them should come down. Then that's what we're gonna do. You know,
Thank you,
I-
I feel better with that.
I can't even imagine they do say that, but they could, you know,
There
they could say
is
that.
one tree that we are taking down, because it is the most.
It'll be one of, it's the
One of
one by
the
the Swan Pond that
Right.
that was in between all the flags. So eventually that's gonna come down, we don't know when, but that'll have to come down.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just an
But it's,
embarrassment to
it's
the community.
basically what's left of the large ones that are down there that you can see, that we all remember from childhood, right?
Right, it's,
Right.
it's really any pine tree, any
Spruce.
conifer, any spruce from the pond or the water fountain
Yeah, forward.
north.
Yeah, yeah,
So, and I think it's 8.
they're sprinkled throughout.
Yeah, yeah. So, but they, in my opinion, and in the opinion of the tree warden, they need to come down.
Okay.
But again, it's, you know,
But
I
to be
like her,
clear,
I like
it's-
her idea of harvesting the tree trunks. I think
Why
that's a
waste
great idea.
Well, at least-
I think we definitely, should take her idea into consideration when replanting is maybe putting a couple, 3 conifers in, healthy conifers. We got 2 small ones,
Yes,
3.
like
2 on the
or
town clerk
each
side.
there, yeah.
One over in front of Cody's.
Yep.
So, we're trying to keep those going. So, just one step at a time. We can't do anything unless if they're still there, and it's just, right now, in my opinion, all 8 are an eyesore and they need to come down. So,
So we have a sealed bid process. They'll
Yep.
come to me, I'll open them.
Yep.
I'll create a document for the board. The board will then have an open dialogue with a synopsis and all bids available to have another dialogue with the public and a
Correct.
decision point,
Correct.
an action point.
yeah, odds are it's not gonna happen until springtime.
Yeah.
I
There's
mean,
no
it's just not
action.
enough, there's not enough time.
And we also need to know if we got the grant or not, because
Right.
if we don't get the grant, then there's no way to move on that right now. Well, I take that back. Beautification might be able to do a piecemeal over the next 10 years where they could take one down, put one back, but that would be about it, really.
It's gonna be what, $1,500 to $2,000 a tree, I imagine.
Yeah,
I don't know.
roughly, depends, I don't know.
I don't know.
Roughly.
But it's still a bit up in the air about how many have to necessarily go. We're not sure yet. It's up to them to
We'll
figure it
We
out.
said that.
let the bidders tell us.
Okay.
But again, I think it's a great idea that Ms. Walsh had about harvesting the trunks. So,
By the way, how many trees are in the park? Has anybody ever counted them?
No, but that's something that I'm working with Frank on. We're gonna do an inventory of the Village Green
Yeah.
Park. We're gonna do an inventory of all the trees and the shrubbery, and then we're going to come up with a 5-year plan for the park and how we can maintain and add to what we have.
all through the beautification committee,
That will be through
Okay.
beautification, absolutely.
perfect.
With our compliance?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna move on anything in the park without permission from the
Okay.
village.
Okay, good.
So, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Any further discussion about the trees in the park?
Number 9. What's this?
Okay, moving on to number 9. Discuss funding request for proposal for an engineering study for 74 Merchants Row, Swanton Village Municipal Parking Lot.
As the trustees are aware, we own 74 Merchants Row. It's the one on the park side of the building on Merchants Row, abuts Renee Chaffee's property. Hi, Renee. So it's only as good right now. It's not an improved lot at all. It gets some action. It sees some cars. But we believe with a proper engineering study, it goes all the way back. If you're going, hit me with the road, Diana, I always
Ferry
forget.
Street.
Thank you, down Ferry Street. That first telephone pole on the right, it extends that far back and quite a ways over. So a quick, very brief, back of a napkin from an engineer says 25 to 27 parking spots in a paved parking area. We're at a great point in the Village of Swanton. We actually have a parking problem. We wanted one. The businesses are doing well, and now we have a parking problem. So these are very valuable to us. The problem is you can't apply for a grant for that project unless it's shovel ready. Shovel ready means you actually have to solicit an engineering study and have the engineering study complete prior to having it be shovel ready. So we're truly missing out on the ability to apply for various grants for that, which we may or may not get. We need to have an engineering study commissioned. We believe, while we've gotten multiple quotes, we have remaining funds available in ARPA, not a lot, but this would cost about $30,000. So the study would last forever. It'd be there, the engineering results. We would then apply aggressively for grants over the next however many years, because it might take that long, but it would be ready to go.
Grants available for the study.
No grants available for the study. The engineering study would be fully funded out of ARPA funds. So yes, it's a grant.
We have
It's a, we do.
We do?
We have
We had
roughly
15 or something.
roughly $39,000 left over.
Okay.
And
What do you need from us?
with the ARPA, we needed to have that committed by the end of the year, is that correct though?
By the end of next year.
End of next
So
year.
we would commission this would be done. In December, we will do a final accounting of ARPA and do similar to what the town did, do a motion to convert ARPA into a special reserve fund is what they call it,
Okay.
of the remaining 9,000, just to protect those funds.
All
So
right.
if it were approved, a motion would look something like: the village trustees authorize the village manager to contract with VHB to complete an engineering study for 74 Merchants Row, the parking lot. This contract, funded through ARPA, shall not exceed $30,000.
So, motion needed.
I move to do this motion.
And I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second motion to approve the engineering study for 74 Merchants Road. Do we have any further discussion?
One question. Will the engineer that is chosen factor in EV chargers?
Yeah. And so that's already part of the design. Remember, we have,
Yeah.
Right.
we have a grant in process for 2 fast chargers for the front of that lot.
Yep.
Yeah,
We asked a long time ago. The state of Vermont says it's in the queue. We haven't heard back.
you haven't heard yet?
No. No idea.
Okay, that's all, that's.
Yes.
Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carried to approve maximum of 30K for engineering study for 74 Merchants Row. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Number 10, select a construction manager for proposed construction for Swanton Village Electric located at 124 First Street.
Yeah, so for the past several meetings, we've been talking about the desire to try to move our electric company next door. For those that haven't heard about the process, that's everybody that works out there, everybody who works in here, which is one office, Heidi's right behind that cubicle, and anyone in the main corridor, to include the office administrative professionals. So we went through a process using Weeman Lamphere Architects, and we did a CM proposal request. 5 companies submitted bids. We had an internal committee of folks here that evaluated those bids. We interviewed the top 3. The firm that was selected by the internal committee was Connor Contracting out of St. Albans. So they're a local firm. They had the far and away the most competitive package, to include the lowest amount up front. So their CM fee for pre-construction, which is from tonight, if approved, through a bond vote in March, is $6,400. Not a penny more than that would be spent pending the results of the bond vote. Many more meetings will happen, public meetings, to talk about the total cost, but it's exactly why you hire a construction manager to help you finalize square footage needs, building needs, requirements, and everything like that. And then they'll do that. They'll work with us over the next month or so, and then we'll have public forums. So for the trustees, what we're looking for is something like this. This was very specific based on Weeman Lamphere's language. The Swanton Village Trustees authorize the village manager, William Sheets, to enter into a contract for construction management services for Swanton Village Electric with Connor Contracting Incorporated based on their proposal dated October 17th, 2024. The pre-construction services provided prior to bond votes covering the period of November 25, 2024 to March 4th, 2025 shall not exceed $6,400.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second to approve Bill's motion for the Connor Construction.
My motion. He
Your
read it.
motion, well, I'm sorry, proposal for the motion.
There you go.
Yeah, right. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
And just so everybody knows, you know, once we have final drawings, or at least some drawings, then we can come out to the public and say, hey, here's what we're looking at. So we can all tear it apart and start over. So,
Something like that.
something like that.
Diane, we will need a letter, formal on our letterhead for a contract with Connor Contracting as well.
Okay, moving along. Number 11, approve funding for Hometown Heroes banners for heroes killed in action using the ARPA funds.
No, that's not me, that's
Is that you?
Adam's.
That's me. So at our joint meeting last week with the town, I actually proposed the village and the town each sponsoring one banner. And
And it became 3,
then it became 3, and then it became
the rest of them.
the 12 or 13.
There's
and
11 between the bridge and the actual memorial, and then we decided on one additional one for all of the
Civil
fallen for Civil War.
Yeah. So there were 12?
12.
Yeah, so the town appropriated funds from their special reserve for 6, and the village, I will make the motion that we appropriate funds for 6 from our special reserve to sponsor the remaining Hometown Hero banners.
So point of clarification, after we adjourned and left, I went back and viewed the meeting and they modified their amount to not to exceed 1,200.
Right, so then I went and spoke with Kathy the following day, and she asked me, because she said that that was just in case there was any fees or whatever, and I said, no, that includes
Okay.
everything, so I just need the 1050.
Okay.
So that's all I need from the village as well as 1050, and so then that will sponsor all 12 of the banners that we discussed.
And these are for the Civil War.
No, these are, so at Veterans Memorial Park, there is a monument, and on the back there's names. So it's all the people that are listed on there who haven't already been sponsored. So
Okay.
Plus
plus one
the
for the
Civil War, and then the one by the bridge.
Yeah.
That hadn't been sponsored yet.
Okay. Was the Civil War like the name, like one flag, and we were gonna name
One-
the
yeah.
names on the
Yes,
flags?
we're gonna put something like the honor of Swanton Civil War fallen. I think that's what we
Okay.
decided to
Yeah.
use for language. And then we would put like the Union Army symbol
Yeah.
Put a
up
flag
there.
up or something,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'll amend my motion to make it 1050. 1,050, not 1050.
And can the motion please state using ARPA funds?
Yes, using
Yes.
ARPA funds.
And I'll second that.
Okay.
Additional information.
All right, we have a first and a second to use the ARPA funds to approve spending $10.50 to join together with the town, kind of in a one Swanton type of gesture, that we will sponsor jointly the remaining people that are missing from the monument that haven't been sponsored yet for the Hometown Heroes banners. All in favor?
Aye.
I
Anybody
abstain.
opposed?
I
And Susie's abstaining, yep. Okay, 2 in favor, 1 abstain. Motion carried. Moving right along, number 12, approve letter of support for a transportation alternatives grant for the Canada Street streetscape.
Yeah, so the history of this is prior to my arrival, there was a scoping study for downtown that covered many things: Merchants Row, Canada Street, Church Street, that entire area. Of course, as anticipated, the total cost of all of it collectively was millions of dollars. So we had to cut it into slices. And what we planned for now will occur 2-3 years later in all likelihood. So if you remember, we used $75,000 in ARPA funds to match a $300,000 grant for Merchants Row. All the engineering work is done. Construction should start and be completed next year for that Merchants Row piece. We applied for and received, we asked for $600,000. We received roughly $480 some odd thousand for the continuation of the project on Church Street with a 20% match. That was approved by the trustees. This is now that third piece. In addition to 74 Merchants Row parking, we know there's a critical need that was outlined in the scoping study to really essentially eliminate the left turn lane, bump out the streetscapes, do whatever we can with the money that we receive. But the first step is, in order for us to even apply for these fundies, the trustees must approve, because there's a large match. So the match is 20%, $600,000 is what we're seeking. The match could be a maximum of $150,000. Again, likely to span 2 funding years. Probably 2027, 2028 is when it would impact our budget.
2027, 2029.
Roughly.
So,
Is this a hard match?
This is a hard match,
Okay.
How much was it?
150.
150.
150,000.
And that amount has due when?
It is due, well, it's due in stages, so I would assume we would contract with VHB as an engineering study for the continuity of this, but much of that has been done, so they would just talk about the Church Street piece. That could happen as early as next year, probably not, probably the year after. So you could see a funding impact for us. 20% of whatever is expended in 2026 would be the earliest we would expend funds on this. But the construction, let's face it, we can call it what we want. Government moves slow, and this is gonna take time. Merchants Row took 3 years. Church Street's gonna take 3 years. This is likely gonna take 3 years.
So, could be quite a while.
Could be quite a while.
Okay. So, you need a motion
Well,
to,
Yes.
I have a question before we get started. Where are we gonna get the money? You gotta get $100,000 out of somewhere.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
huh?
I need an answer.
You're gonna raise it through
General fund.
taxes, general fund.
General fund,
Yeah.
put it in part,
Mhm.
put it in with the
Yep.
PWDs, cause it's
Mhm.
probably gonna come out of the highway,
Yep.
so that's what you're gonna do, you're gonna bump up the highways
Correct.
either by 150, or you're gonna divide it over several years.
Likely over 2 calendar years.
I would suggest dividing it, but could we also put it in as a separate item?
Like a separate voting item?
Mm-hmm.
Ja, då så vi kan.
You could put it as a separate line item. We wouldn't be able to apply until after it's approved.
Right.
You wouldn't even put this grant request in the queue until that time.
Theory, if we have the.
And then the question is, how can you obligate in a voting year, say for example, just talking out loud, that you wanted to put it on 2025? This isn't money that's gonna be spent in 2025's budget year, not even likely 26. So we're 3 or 4 years out from requiring this money, 2 or 3 years out.
That's why I'm suggesting a separate item, which we could put in reserve for this and not in the regular highway budget.
That's an option. Then you are also, just to play it all out, you could get that, put it in reserve, but not
Sure.
receive any grant funding.
Well, then I imagine it goes to something else.
Catch-22.
Being access to 7 and 78, is there anything we could get out of the state?
This is state transportation alternatives grant.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we could do something to put aside X amount till we get there, in theory. So that smaller increments build up to and accrue.
We
account.
could, we would have to build it into our budget starting whenever the trustees would desire that to be built in.
Because this could be 6 or 7 years away.
But that is, I hope it's not that far, that is the reality. In order for us to take advantage of $600,000, we have to identify $150,000. And that's our cost of doing business for the state. They're gonna know that everybody is in the same boat, everybody who receives this grant's in the same exact boat.
Do we have to make this decision tonight?
No,
Could we
Can we,
ask,
could we table this until next
Yeah,
meeting?
let's table
it would
this.
have to, yes, not much longer than
No,
that, because we have
let's-
to get in the
yeah.
queue. If
Yeah.
we're gonna
I'd like to-
apply,
yeah. because
I'd like
we
to
should-
table it.
Sure.
I'm
Yeah.
not comfortable making this decision tonight.
Yeah.
I agree with tabling it, and we can ask, our accountant to give her opinion. Because I'm not sure what I'm suggesting is a legal idea.
Is Lynn on?
she's on.
Lynn?
Yeah, she's on, I think.
Maybe
Lynn, can you hear us?
Lynn?
might be away.
She might be away.
It's
Okay.
okay.
But yeah, we can table it, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but Diane, could you just put it on for the next meeting?
Please.
She's listening.
Okay. Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
I guess my question is if we decide to do this 150, that would come out of the highways budget, correct?
Yes, it would.
And so then I know Bill said over 2 years, but if we did it over 3 years, would that, I think, be like a better bite for, not so much coming out in the taxes, or what is your recommendation?
I mean, you can do it over 3 years, and if I don't know how many years the project's gonna go. We can set it aside, over like 3 years, if the project's all gonna happen like in year 2 and 3, and do it up front. I mean, it's a chunk, it's 50,000 a year, or 75,000 if you do it over 2. So, I mean, that's pretty good chunk, on the taxes. And, then there's a choice of, do you want to do it as a separate warning? Or do you
Yeah.
just want to put it in the budget?
I suggest a separate warning if it's legal.
Yeah, I mean, we can.
Okay,
I don't see why you wouldn't be able to put it as a separate, because it's a project.
yes. And everybody will know what it's for.
Yeah.
Let me remind the trustees that you approved the previous grant with a match of roughly $128,000.
Yes.
And the money
For
is
your
all set
Canada
aside for
trip.
that.
The money is not set aside.
So how much do we have to put aside for
It's
that?
the same scenario.
Right. So we only have a couple years to hit that one?
Yes.
So.
Likely 2027 is construction on that in all likelihood. Maybe 26.
27?
26 at the earliest.
So if I understand that you're telling me that there's gonna be a bill due for 128,000, so that we're gonna have to increase the budget for the highway department regardless. That doesn't include this 150,000
Correct.
that we're
That is-
discussing on the table
That is
right now.
correct. Correct.
You aware of that, Lynn?
It's compounding. So.
Yeah, I sat down with Heidi today to make sure I had captured everything that's in the works that's known. Another option, and I had kind of briefly mentioned it to Bill, is as we know we've got these projects coming, you can always choose to lump it all and do a bond vote so that we're not increasing, the highway budget for a couple of years and then drastically reducing it. And you also have those inflationary costs every year. So we could do, you'd have to go out to bond or take out a note basically and have an Australian ballot vote. But we could do it that way, so we know we've got the 128 and the 150, and you do it a combined, and you do it up front. And then, we can figure out the borrowing piece at that time. Like, maybe do 2 separate borrowings, but you've got the vote already held.
Yep,
And then you can stretch it out over, 5 years or whatever to pay it back.
that makes sense.
That makes a lot of
We
sense.
can break it up
I
to
like that
smaller
better.
bits over time using the bond.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, because then the payback would be in each year's. So if you take the bond out and you do it over, say, 5 years, you would include principal and interest, basically 1/5 of that total issuance over the course of the 5 years.
Yep.
It kind of smooths it a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, you would have interest costs to incur. But that's a way not to, 1 year increase the budget by the 75,000 and then for 2 years and then
Decrease
reduce
it.
it and.
Yeah,
So
no, that makes sense.
we wouldn't need to start paying for the bond until we started needing the money? So it'd be a while before we had to start incrementing the fees for the bond, or is it just start the process now ahead of time?
It'd be the fees.
So once you
fees.
do once you do the bond vote, so say you do it or take out a loan, it's basically a approval for a loan. And you did that, say you did that in 2026, but the project's not gonna happen till 2027, we wouldn't even go to the bank until shortly before the project starts to get the funding.
Yeah,
Okay.
and rates might be a lot better
Yes,
by then.
once you get voter approval, you don't have to immediately go out and get the loan.
Okay.
Okay, that's good information.
But
Next,
so
next
I-
meeting is good timing as
Yeah.
well, because
I
Heidi
think so.
will be here. It's her turn to
Yep.
be at the
Oh, yeah,
table,
that
so
works. Perfect.
good timing.
Yeah.
So this is good information, but we're gonna table this decision until the next meeting.
Correct.
And we need to make a motion to do that, or can we just table it?
No, we just tabled it.
I'll just add to the minutes.
All right. Moving right along, Bill, village manager update,
Super quick tonight.
it's going down.
We did 7 class tours with MVU over the all of last week. So Dan, thank you, you're in the room. Chief Sullivan, you were here. So fire, police, hydroelectric tours, love them. Already have a bunch of kids interested in the hydroelectric internship for next year. So these things, they pay dividends. It's our way to give back. So love those tours, and I'd say we do about 20 a year on average. Just to highlight, if you didn't watch the last meeting, just to provide a synopsis for those that are listening, we had a joint meeting to discuss a couple things, to include a local option tax. I have been asked by the Board of Trustees, along with Brian Savage, to go down to Montpelier in this legislative session to kind of fix some language that's broken on equitable sharing if you're a village and a town. The most important thing for you all to hear is the Board of Trustees have decided not to pursue a local option tax in 2025 until we can figure this out with the legislature. So if you didn't hear it there, you heard it here. Same discussion, everyone's very interested on the future of the Depot Street Vietnam Veterans Memorial Bridge. It's due for replacement in some manner in 2029. The village and the village taxpayers alone are on the hook for between 2.5 and 10% of the total cost, depending on the scope of the project and whether or not we close the bridge or keep it open to one-lane traffic. Best case scenario, 2.5%, roughly 250,000 minimum, 300,000. Worst case, 10%. Ouch. Big amount of money, $1 to $1.5 million. So we were all waiting, and this is the follow-up for the Board of Trustees. We reached out back out to the state of Vermont. They're gonna come in for another public forum, their second one, where they talk about what they think is the initial scope and design. They'll have that meeting established by the end of January, but likely February, March. They'll come in front of the trustees. I assume we'll invite the select board and have a dialogue about that. So just got to figure out how we're going to pay for that in 2029.
And based on what you've heard, 2029 is still the target date.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yep, I wouldn't mind seeing a little delay there.
It's quite possible.
It's possible, it's always
Yep.
possible.
But it's a date that's been set chronologically from long ago.
Yep. Wastewater. So just this last thing I have, it's progressing well to the point where every project phase is running smoothly. For those that haven't watched or haven't been paying attention, we got a bond years ago for $8.5 million. It's 16-month projects. It's gonna end as of right now, just about on Christmas Day of 2025. It's complicated. There's a lot of moving parts to this thing, but Kingsbury Construction is doing a great job. I would urge before the snow flies that the Board of Trustees can be, so we don't have to warn it, it can be individually.
Yep.
It's a reminder, it's a hard hat mandatory. We have them in the office down there and vest. But where you can see the new tanks installed in the buildings and things like that, the pipes in the ground, it's really a good time to go down there and take a tour. So I encourage you. If anyone from the public has an interest, you got to just set it up so that we can go down there, do a safety briefing with Kingsbury and give you a quick walkthrough. But there wasn't a lot of interest in the open houses that we did prior to the project. We had 5 of them and we had 2 people total. I guess as long as
It's a very
as
interesting
long as we
market.
take care of our wastewater needs, I guess everybody's good with it. Yes.
Any update on the centrifuge?
Centrifuge is still delayed. That's probably gonna be one of the later parts of the project, unfortunately. For those that don't know, the centrifuge is what takes our sludge and has the ability to de-water, at least stuff that comes to the end stage. We store it in a building and we land apply it every 2 or 3 years as needed. So we just recently land applied 237 tons of it on our land on Woods Hill Road, saving our taxpayers close to $90,000 by doing it in-house ourselves.
But there's zero extraction of sludge right now.
Correct.
It's all going into the lagoon.
It's all
Except-
going to the lagoon.
Except for the 60 to 70% that Mother Nature takes care of on its own. And that's all I have.
That's all you have?
Wait, no hydro, no unit, whatever's not.
I got it. I've learned I have to take it easy and I can't monopolize the meetings with the data.
I wanna know what's going on with my hydro.
Well, he's
Dan
right
just gave
there.
us a presentation last time, not long ago.
You're making 8.5 right now.
Thank you.
It's all that matters.
Superb.
Big production after that most recent rain. We really needed it.
Nice.
Yeah, where'd you get the rain?
Yeah, it's still not showing up down below here in the river, I'll tell you that.
No, it isn't. The river is really low.
Great. Yeah, no, I haven't seen it that low in a long time.
Ooh, 15, 20 years ago.
All right.
Lake level was 93 feet the other day, 93 and a half.
Wow. Well, thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Number 14, any other necessary business?
I got some events. I got 30 November, we got Small Business Saturday, and at 3:30 there's Christmas in the Park. And on the 7th of December, between 9 and 12, you can get some donuts with Santa over at MVR. And at 8 p.m., 90 proof will be at the VFW. And then we just want to give a shout out, some recognition to MVU's National Honor Society for the beautiful holiday windows they painted at the parts store, the bistro, Bees, and Missing Piece, as well as the library.
And it was National Arts Honor
Oh,
Society.
National Arts Honor Society, sorry, messed the art.
Yeah, and special shout out for the parks, looking pretty spiffy with the new lights around the poles and everything, and the light tunnel.
Huge thank you to
the folks that put that
the electric
together.
department for putting the lights up.
Oh, and the
Huge thank you to
ladies'
Mr. Domi for hauling the tree out and getting it in the park and everything like that. So it's a
And the
tradition
fire.
now, so.
Fire Department's auxiliary for building that.
Yep, this is a
tunnel.
real community event.
Very
It's
nice.
turned into a real community event.
Did you say
So-
14, 15-foot tree, Jeff, the other day?
16.
16.
Yeah, nice.
Looks quite tall compared to some years.
16
Ernie
feet
thinks a
tall.
little big. He says, oh, it's an 18, 19 footer. Ernie,
Fills the whole fence.
I got a 16-foot trailer. It's not hanging over that far.
And it's been brought to my attention a special recognition to a business in the community that's done some really nice pro bono work for the fire department, and also for the Abenaki Food Shelf for repairing their truck. Jamie's Automotive on 78.
Nice.
Thank you very much, guys. It's much appreciated. Any other necessary business?
Good.
Okay. Number 15, executive session.
I move that we find that we enter into executive session for the trustees to receive confidential legal information for which the premature disclosure of it to the general public would clearly place the trustees and others at substantial disadvantage.
Seconded.
Thank you, public.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.